Welcome to Heart2Heart, stories about living well with heart failure. This podcast was created for the Heart Hub, the Ted Rogers Center for Heart Research patient, caregiver, and family education website. I'm Anne Simard, staff scientist at University Health Network. I'm also the daughter of a parent living with heart failure. Living well with a complex chronic disease like heart failure has serious impacts on all aspects of your life. Today, I'm joined by Kyle. Kyle is a Torontonian, a husband to Marley, a dad to 3-year-old Max, and a marketing professional. Kyle is also a patient partner here at UHN who's been living with heart failure for 5 years, leading to a heart transplant in fall 2020. Welcome, Kyle.
Hi, Anne. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be doing this and seeing you in person.
It is kind of exciting to actually be together in a same room. For our audience, of course, who don't know you as I do, perhaps we should start at the beginning. Living with a heart condition is not a new thing for you. Tell us a little bit about how yours was first discovered.
For sure. So I was born with a heart murmur, and thinking back, I do have vague memories of seeing a child cardiologist when I was younger, but for most of my childhood I had no symptoms, and we were told that everything was fine and there was nothing really to worry about.
But maybe perhaps that not worrying was entirely not true.
Correct. When I was 13, I was playing on my middle school basketball team, and I started to just feel more tired and out of breath than the rest of my teammates. It was noticeable when running flights of stairs in practice or even just playing the game on the court. So I was a little concerned, spoke to my parents about it, who were more concerned, and they took me to see a child cardiologist at Sick Kids right away. And ultimately I was diagnosed with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy through Sick Kids, but given my stature, it was decided that I should be seen at Toronto General by a cardiologist here.
Because you were 13.
Correct, yes.
So that meant, I'm imagining, that your life changed. How did your life change as a result of this diagnosis?
Well, one of the first things I was told is that I had to stop many of the sports and physical activities that I was doing. And being 13, my first thought was, so what am I going to tell the rest of the guys on the team, my friends? Like, why would I need to stop doing this? Do I feel comfortable telling everyone that I'm different and there's something going on? And at the time, that was really my biggest focus. I just didn't know how to deal with that, really. So that was then. And then I guess in retrospect, I also had no idea what the true impact of that initial diagnosis would ultimately have on my life today.
And were you managing the health part okay? Did you feel pretty much almost like that your health was the same?
I think so, other than being out of breath when doing sports and really like exerting myself. Nothing else felt really different. It was more after having different life experiences that I started to notice maybe some differences between me and some of the other people that were my own age. One of the things I think about is going to summer camp that year and seeing my friends helping others with heavy duffel bags, probably just really trying to impress other people. But I wasn't able to do that. So I would pretend I was busy doing something else and sort of let them do that, trying to just pass off as, not that I can't do it, but I'm just doing something else and I'm normal, everything's fine.
And, it's complicated being a teenager anyway. In that same period, I think, I'm guessing, you start a suite of medications. Did you have any other kind of therapies, devices also kind of added to your menu of adaptations, I guess?
Yes. Yes, and in a big way. So when I got back from camp that summer, I was told that I would need an artificially implanted cardio defibrillator, so an AICD, and was pretty overwhelmed by the idea of having a surgery and also starting some medications. I think I was on 2 at the time. And I was told it was really just precautionary, so I'd be able to live normally like anyone else, but the truth is, I still couldn't. I mean, separate and apart from having the surgery, I still couldn't go back to playing basketball or playing hockey or skiing behind a boat or down a hill. I was still not able to do those types of things. It was more of a day-to-day just trying to make sure that I could not worry all of the time. So came back and had the surgery towards the end of the summer. And first time having a surgery, so obviously that was a big deal. The recovery was kind of weird. So it's in like your left pectoral muscle, so painful, can't really lift your arm, very stiff, and you're also not allowed to lift. I'm sure there's a specific weight allowance, can't remember now, but I guess can't lift anything that seems heavy at the time, which was also a big deal because I was starting high school, which for anyone is scary, terrifying, all of those things. And I, of course, was coming out of a surgery, which was very private and not allowed to carry anything heavy. So one of my first high school memories is showing up at school and needing to have one of those rolly backpacks.
Oh, yes.
And still scars me today.
Not the coolest backpack you
Yeah,
could have had.
not like I don't know what the brands were and would have been cool at the time, but not something you could just throw over your shoulder. I think it had straps, so probably for the first few days I rolled it around because I thought I should, or maybe I would hold it on the other side of my body to try and not attract so much attention. But there's nothing cool about a rolly bag unless it's a suitcase at the airport. But I was just doing whatever I could to try and recover quickly and get back to some semblance of normalcy at the time.
Did you have any kind of techniques that helped you kind of sort it through in your own mind for yourself? And you obviously were still staying healthy because you were still doing sports, still doing activity,
Yes, yeah.
even if it wasn't the structured,
Yes, so two things that I did continue to do because I was able to adapt. So one of the things I started doing early on, which I think is more common now, but I started seeing sort of a personal trainer that would be able to help me adapt exercises that I could do, and I was supervised and
That's
made sure they
great.
did a lot of research to understand like what I could and couldn't do and what was acceptable. And one thing that I started, I don't remember at what age, but I had been doing Taekwondo privately, like in someone's basement with a few friends, and someone who would come in and teach us. And we were actually able to adapt that so I could continue to have that experience and use that both as something to do with others, have that type of discipline where I'd have to exert myself but at an okay level, and also report every Sunday morning. I think it was like at 8 a.m., which is obviously difficult once you're in high school to start getting up at 7 and getting there and whatnot. But that was still a good experience and sort of helped with remaining on the healthier side of things for sure.
And so if I think about, from kind of infancy, there were sort of some cardiac issues, then things get, a fair bit more complicated when you're a young teenager, when you get the diagnosis of cardiomyopathy. But it sounds like things kind of went along fairly well and you found good coping strategies, and obviously you went to university. Was there a moment where sort of things shifted again for you and maybe the ride got a little more complicated?
Yes. So just before my wedding, I was 30 years old, and I was told that things had taken a turn and that I would need to see a different doctor with a different specialty because I was in heart failure.
And was that like sudden and unexpected? Like obviously you'd been managing your previous diagnosis successfully. It's not really the news you want when you're about to celebrate one of the happiest days of your life, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely not. It was pretty out of nowhere for me and hit me pretty hard. And especially for me and my now wife as well. Like just like all of my friends and anyone who I had told along the way, I always said, here's who I am, here's what I have, but it's being managed, everything's okay, everything is going to be okay. So I had a suspicion that things weren't great when I was told I needed to see a different doctor, but that first appointment, going in and hearing that it was heart failure and what that meant in the moment and for the rest of my life was really, really scary, and something I remember as if it was yesterday.
Yeah. Do you remember how you paused and took it in?
It was really overwhelming. I think the first thing I did, which was smart at the time, and I definitely recommend for any big doctor's appointments, is I didn't go myself. Mm-hmm. So I brought my now wife and both of my parents, which felt kind of funny. It was like maybe I should have chosen one or the other, but my parents had the history. My wife needed to know what was going to go on moving forward. And we went in, we heard that it was heart failure and received some information. And there was just a million questions. So I think we all took our turns. And to be honest, there was a lot of tears.
Yeah.
It was really a lot to take in all at once. I think for me, the three things that stand out the most was one, I was told that I might need something called an LVAD, which I didn't really know what it was at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and that I also in the future might need a heart transplant. But all those things also felt far away. As I said, I was 30, and I was told like these things might be things I might need to consider 10 years down the road. But it still freaked me out. I didn't really understand what anything was. I remember pulling out my phone and Googling an LVAD and
Yeah.
one of the images that came up and thinking it looked weird, like someone was wearing some sort of jetpack backpack type of thing.
Yes.
And my first thought was, there's no way I'm ever going to get one of those. And I weirdly felt like a heart transplant was an easier thing to go through and definitely the right decision if it was going to be my choice one day.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that definitely stands out for sure. The second thing, which was also something new for me, was no alcohol at all under any circumstances. Not a big deal. I wasn't ever really a big drinker, but not necessarily what you would plan on hearing. I think it was within 4 weeks of my upcoming bachelor party. So that was
Oh gosh.
interesting
That
news.
put a little damper on the celebrations.
Yeah, I mean, for a moment, I think in the car ride home, I was like, should we just cancel it? Like,
Mm.
what's the point? But obviously that wasn't what we did and wouldn't have been the right decision. It was still important to have time with my close friends and family. And the third was that I needed to be on a low sodium diet. And that freaked me out quite a bit. I didn't really know what that was all about at the time. And I think one of the first things that came into my head was, so even if I'm going to come to a doctor's appointment at a hospital, there's probably nothing I can eat in the hospital food court.
Mm-hmm.
And I just paused there and I was just like, so what does that even mean? Like, how am I going to leave my home and be able to eat something? I think that was definitely like a lot to take in all at once. It was really helpful to have the support at the appointment, and then taking some time to go home and sort of digest that information too.
So I'm guessing, like, you had a team with you. Obviously, you had your fiance at the time, you had your parents, and then it sounds like you have a good network of people who quickly got into the loop. But also, you personally, I'm sure, were kind of processing, what does all this mean? And I'm wondering, as you were kind of internalizing and processing all those things, did it shift? Did your wedding still go ahead? It sounds like you didn't cancel the bachelor party. Like, how did you start adjusting your priorities and your thinking?
Yeah, a lot. It's a lot at once, right? Because you're dealing with the day-to-day of making the quick changes. I mean, not drinking alcohol, at least for me, was an easy pause, but thinking every moment what I'm going to eat at this meal, with also how do we continue to plan our wedding and look forward to this great celebration? How do we make the day work? How do we ensure that I'm not going to overdo it on the day and still enjoy it? It's a lot to take in, and you're thinking of yourself as someone who's like living through this happy moment, but you're also taking in a lot. I think for me, it was really the first time that I was like, oh, I'm someone who is sick. I'm someone who is a patient, and you're scared a little bit in the moment and for the future. And there's just the bouncing back and forth of I'm so happy, this is a great day with celebrations leading up to what's the future hold now. I think you definitely pause and think about that a lot differently than if you were just planning your wedding. But at the same time, I think it just made a lot of things super clear for me in terms of what was really important, not only at the time, but in general, and what's important in life. You have to have your health.
Yep.
You want to, what else is really important is your family, like the people I brought with me to that meeting, the first people we called when I got home, and your close friends who are your chosen family, like the people who are on the bachelor party, who you can call up and be like, hey, the food might really suck and I'm not going to be drinking, but let's go and have a good time, and let's still, form those memories and relationships together.
I'm just wondering, as that shift kind of happened, so, and this is kind of an interesting moment to pause too. What do you think is kind of like the key to how you processed in the moment at that time? All the acronyms, the medical terms, these kind of concepts, whether it's diet, whether it's medication, or whether it's thinking of yourself as a patient. Like, is there sort of some advice or guidance that you would give to others, as I'm sure many people also have those shocks and questions that they ask themselves?
For sure. I mean, I think the short term and the long term come into play together. And the best thing you can do is focus on what you can do now to benefit yourself in the long term. So for me, immediately, it was learning some of the different medications, figuring out, the rhythm with how to build that into your daily routine, figuring out the diet, the appropriate exercise, all with the ultimate goal of remaining healthy with the potential for maybe an LVAD or a transplant in the future. There is still a lot of pulling out the phone and Googling what does this acronym mean, a lot of lists, a lot of phone alarms for medications, and writing things into your calendar. Yeah, honestly, it feels like it's a full-time job. I think for me, with the theme of the titles that you were talking about, I was someone's son, I was a soon-to-be husband, I was a brother, a friend. There was this whole other me that was forming as this patient, as this heart failure patient, that I didn't like that person really and didn't want to deal with that person, but that person would pop up from time to time, and sometimes far too often. And right now that person almost had to become sort of a major focus, more intertwined with all of those other people.
Yeah, I think that's a very real new version of you in some ways, right? Yeah. And as you said, like if it felt like managing kind of your condition and symptoms are like a full-time job, it is kind of a redefinition journey. Partly you're redefining kind of how you live your day to day, but also you're redefining like who you are and all that. We're going to continue this interview in episode 2. Of course, I wish we could say that, this was the end and none of those things happened. But, things got a little more complicated, and we'll talk about that more. But any kind of final words you want to leave folks with at this kind of juncture of your story?
Absolutely. There's so many feelings and so much information that come with these life changes and this diagnosis. It's really overwhelming, and I think that there's a lot more and better resources today, even the podcast and the website, that I think could really help someone cope and understand what they're going through and really appreciate that they're not alone. I for sure had a great childhood, really supportive parents and family and friends, but I think as someone going through what I did in the first 30 years of my life, even though it was well controlled, there was still all the appointments and not understanding what things were and all about, and having to continue to remind myself and dealing with medication and whatnot, and just having those resources available as a support today compared to what I think was available over 30 years ago. It's really incredible, and it makes me really happy to see that there are those supports available to people out there. And to be honest, that's a big reason why I'm doing this podcast and why it makes me feel really good about being a patient partner who's helping build out this website.
Thanks. I think, knowing you're not alone and hearing how others got through it, right, is super helpful. So thank you, Kyle, for this sort of first juncture in this first phase of your story. Thanks to our listeners. Today I was joined by Kyle, and I'm Anne Simard, so thank you so much for listening. If you or someone you love has problems with their heart function or has been diagnosed with heart failure, please do visit our website, www.ourhearthub.ca. You'll find there are lots of other patient and caregiver stories, medical and treatment information, and importantly, supports that might help you manage, like online communities. Stay healthy and stay safe, and all my thanks to you, Kyle, for sharing your story.